Started. Welcome to Empower Missouri's 2025 legislative preview. My name's Lucas Caldwell McMillan. A new face here at Empower Missouri. I joined a few months ago as Chief of Policy Staff. This is our agenda for today. So along with me, there's some other new members of the policy team. So we're going to do a quick overview of who's on the team covering what, introduce you to some other new faces. Then we'll have a legislative session overview, dive into our core issue areas, starting with community justice, and then talk about how you can join us in 2025 in advocating in Jefferson City and beyond.
Lead the policy. Okay.
So you've already met me. Hi, I'm the Chief of Policy Staff. We now have two policy managers in all of our core issue areas. So you'll hear today from Christine Woody, our longtime food security policy manager. She's been joined by Amanda Berry, who joined around the same time I did a few months ago and is terrific. On our community justice team, we have Gwen Smith-Moore and our newest member of the policy team, Rika White, who just joined a few weeks ago and has been a great addition to the team. And some longer experienced members, no new members to our affordable housing policy manager. It's still in the capable hands of V. Sanchez and Misha Smith. So you'll get a chance to meet some of them on this webinar today. You may have met some of them already in our coalition meetings, but certainly we'll be working tirelessly during the legislative session. You'll hear more updates from all of us as we move forward. And with that, I think I pass it over to Mallory to go over the session overview.
Hey y'all, it is so great to be here with all of you. And I know that I am looking forward to another robust session in the Capitol in the new year. So I just wanted to start with a few basics. I know some of you are, doing this professionally and probably know some of this already, but I know we also have some advocates in the crowd who might not have committed all of these dates to memory yet. So just a quick overview. So session this year starts on January the 8th. That is a Wednesday. There are 3 breaks during session, 2 long weekends where the legislature does not meet on Mondays. So that is on MLK Day, which also this year happens to be the presidential inauguration. So that will be a 3-day break for the legislature. And then the legislature also takes a 3-day break over Easter weekend, so they do not meet on Easter Monday. And then, of course, they take a week off in March for legislative spring break. So those are the dates for that, March 17th through 21st, if you want to jot those down. And then the session this year will end on Friday, May 16th. So we had some elections last month, as I'm sure that everyone is aware. Missouri is a state that observes term limits. And so that means that we have pretty regular turnover that happens within our legislative body because folks can only serve 8 years in each of the 2 chambers. So, we do have a lot of change in the composition of our legislature in that there are going to be a lot of new faces in both chambers. So everything is changing, and yet everything is largely remaining the same when it comes to the partisan breakdown of our 2 chambers. So in the Missouri Senate, the Republicans hold 24 seats, Democrats hold 10. They traded 1 seat. So the Boone County seat that has been held by Caleb Rowden, who was termed out, goes to Stephen Weber, a Democrat in that community. And the Kansas City seat that was held by John Rizzo, who termed out, is now in the hands of Joe Nicola, a Republican. So they traded a seat, but the overall composition remains the same. There are 10 total new senators who will be in the chamber, which is a really large percentage of that body. But most of those folks are coming over from the House. So you can see there are 7 House members who successfully ran for Senate seats. So that's the senator-elects, Lewis, Henderson, Nirenberg, Gregory, Schnelting, Berger, and Hudson. I should say Curtis Gregory, since we have 2 new Senator Gregorys in the Senate, which won't be confusing at all. And then 3 brand new faces to the Senate, or at least based on recent years. I know that Stephen Weber served in the House a while back, but has been away for a while. So Stephen Weber and then Senators-elect Nicola and Gregory will be the brand new face. Okay, sorry for that audio glitch. On the House side of things, the House composition is also remaining exactly the same. So 111 Republican seats to 52 Democratic seats, which with each party flipping also here a single seat. So we did have an incumbent Democrat who was ousted by a Republican and an incumbent Republican who was ousted by a Democrat. So again, everything's changing and everything's remaining the same. We will have 55 brand new members to the House. So that's 34%, just over a third of the body will be brand new. And that's 23 Democrats to 32 Republicans. So, really like almost half of the Democratic caucus is brand new. So I think that you can, plan to look forward to seeing some potential changes in how the Democratic caucus is approaching its work, given that so many of their members are new compared to less than a third of the Republican caucus in the House is going to be new. I always really like to look at where folks are coming from, what their backgrounds are. That often has a lot to do with the perspectives that they are bringing to the legislature. So, the most common professional background of folks who are coming into the legislature are public servants. Folks who have been working for nonprofits or are currently working for nonprofits, who work in local government jobs. We do have a couple of veterans. So we have some folks with some military service coming in. In addition to that, we have 8 small business owners. That's also a pretty common profession because if you own a small business, you presumably set your own hours and can accommodate being in Jeff City uh, for a good chunk of the year. We have 4 attorneys, which is a pretty common profession. 4 current or retired educators. We love that. We think teachers are great. We love to see them in the legislature. We have 3 medical professionals, which is great, and kind of each from different backgrounds. So we have a surgeon and a nurse and a pharmacist. So I think those folks will bring some interesting perspectives. Then we do have a couple of realtors as well. And so, we always kind of keep an eye on that in some of the housing work that we do. We tend to go toe to toe with the Realtors Association quite a bit. So we are always keeping an eye out for new folks who will be sort of advancing the agenda of the Realtors Association. So we'll be keeping an eye on those folks. Couple of other new pieces of demographic information to share. So looking at the new legislators who are coming into both chambers, you can see that our new legislative portfolio is predominantly white, over 80%, with the balance of the group coming in as Black or African American, about 17%. On the gender side of things, it's a little bit more evenly split, but still predominantly male. Almost 64% men make up the new cohort, with then 34, 35% female. One thing I did want to call out is that we do have a new not a new representative who identifies as non-binary. And to my knowledge, that's the first time we've had a legislator who has publicly identified as non-binary. So that I think is a cool and exciting addition for representation in the state. So we're excited to see that and to welcome them to the legislature. There is new leadership in both chambers. So these leadership structures will be finalized during the first week of session, but this is pretty much, we know who are going to be in these positions. So the president pro tem of the Senate will be, that should say Senator Cynthia O'Laughlin. We missed that in our multiple edits of this. The majority floor leader will be Senator Tony Luetkemeyer, and the assistant majority floor leader will be Senator Curtis Trent. On the House side, the Speaker of the House will be Representative John Patterson. You may have heard some rumblings. There's been kind of a last minute challenge to this position from Representative Justin Sparks, but I've had a number of meetings in the last couple of weeks with Republican legislators, all who are incredibly confident that Representative Patterson will indeed be the Speaker of the House, and that there's not a lot of support in the chamber to look for a different person to fill that role. I think that Representative Patterson is going to be a fantastic speaker. We are looking forward to working with him. Likewise, the majority floor leader, Representative Alex Riley, I think is fantastic. For those in the audience who are followers of Clean Slate, Representative Riley chaired the committee in the House where Clean Slate was heard last year, gave it a wonderful and thorough hearing and a quick vote out of the committee. So we are looking forward to having that sort of support for Clean Slate in House leadership, but also just really admire Representative Riley and his approach to things. The Speaker pro tem is going to be Representative Chad Perkins. Again, for some of our CJC folks on the call, you'll recognize that name. Representative Perkins has carried a ton of criminal justice legislation that we have championed over the last few years. He was the real champion in the House for ending the disparity between crack and powder cocaine. So it'll be exciting to see if in his position we can advance even more criminal justice legislation. And then the assistant majority floor leader will be Representative Lane Roberts out of the Joplin area, who is entering his fourth and final term in the House, and who I think will be a great voice of leadership. So we're really excited about the leadership portfolios here and are hopeful that these folks will lead us through a productive session. However, as I say that, and before we sort of get into talking about all of our priorities for this session, I do think it's important for us to recognize that there are a lot of big issues that the legislature is going to attempt to tackle this session. And I think that any one of these issues has the ability to create significant holdups in the legislature's ability to get other work done. And so, just a quick survey of these topics. So abortion access, as you all know, Missouri passed a constitutional amendment enshrining the right to abortion on our ballot in November. Unfortunately, there are a number of legislators who are not interested in upholding the will of the voters. And so a number of bills have been filed to either chip away at those protections or to undo them outright. So I would expect that this will be a major issue in the Capitol with a lot of emotion on both sides of the debate. So I think that you can expect for this to take up a significant amount of time this session. Similarly, abortion access was placed on the ballot through the initiative petition process, as were a number of other issues this last cycle, including sports betting, which is something that the legislature attempted to take on again and again and again and couldn't get done. And so the people took it upon themselves. It's why we have the initiative petition process. And yet, for the last several sessions, a cohort of Missouri's legislators has been just dead set on the idea that we need to roll back this program and make it harder for citizens to make their voices heard through the initiative petition process. So there are already over a dozen bills that have been filed on that issue. So that's something we'll be watching closely. And there is a very large coalition of organizations and individuals around the state who've been working to protect that process. One thing that I think is going to be really important for everyone to pay attention to this session when it comes to the initiative petition process is that you'll notice in the majority of these bills, when they are attempting to amend the threshold for the number of votes that it would take above and beyond a simple majority, that they are only looking typically to apply those changes to constitutional amendments that are brought to the ballot through the initiative petition process, not to raise the thresholds for votes on constitutional amendments that are put on the ballot by the legislators themselves. And we are not going to stand for that sort of hypocrisy. We believe that if they want to raise the threshold for the number of votes that it will take to amend the Constitution, that needs to be the same for all amendments to the Constitution, whether they are introduced to the people through the initiative petition process or from the legislature. So that is going to be an issue that we raise again and again this session. So you can look forward to that. Something that we will likely not work on, but will take up a huge portion of the session, I fear, is this issue of stadium funding. There is a threat that some of our sports franchises in Kansas City will take their business across the river. I guess it's not a river on the Kansas City side. Sorry, that's my St. Louis native coming through across the state line and State Line Road in Kansas City, and move those Kansas City teams to Kansas City, Kansas. There is a lot of concern about the economic ramifications of that. But I will say that in a moment when we are going to really need to provide a lot of social services to folks in Missouri who are actively struggling, I personally don't think that the best use of taxpayer dollars is to subsidize millionaires and millionaires that own sports teams and millionaires who are on sports teams. So we are, in theory, pretty opposed to that, but likely won't do a ton of work on it. And I think it's going to be an interesting thing to have that conversation alongside this conversation about tax reform. Governor-elect Kehoe has said time and time again that he is very passionate about eliminating the income tax in Missouri. And so there are several proposals that have been put in place to do a phase out of state income tax, which is something that some other red states around the country have done. But the interesting thing is going to be looking at what's the other side of that equation. If we get rid of all of that revenue, then how are we going to approach that on the expense side? And what are the cuts that are going to be made and how are those going to impact the people of Missouri? So we will be keeping a very close eye on that and expect for that to take up a lot of time this session as well. But let's get into our policy areas and the things that we are excited to work on this session. And so with that, I will turn it over to Gwen Smith-Moore and Rika White, our two criminal justice policy managers.
Thank you so much, Mallory. We've got a couple different exciting policies and updates to dig in on. And my colleague Rika is going to kick it off and talk about Clean Slate.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rika White. I'm the new Criminal Justice Policy Manager. Clean Slate is one of our top priorities and one of the priorities I will be overseeing this session. This is the third year we've had Republican-filed Clean Slate legislation. Of course, Clean Slate would automate the expungement process, a process that currently less than 1% of qualifying Missouris have been able to access. Our current pre-filed Senate bills for this session is Senate Bill 19 by Senator Brian Williams and Senate Bill 435 by Senator Curtis Trent out in Springfield. Our lifetime limits were increased with last session's Senate Bill 754 from 1 to 2 felonies and from 2 to 3 misdemeanors, and this change is reflected in this year's legislation. We have been laying groundwork with key systems actors to show that Clean Slate is not only necessary but achievable. Currently, this legislation has already been passed by bipartisan groups of legislators and activists in many other states around the country. So Missouri has to just get on board, and I feel like we can get on board really quickly to make this achievable. We'll continue to build this year our team of organizations and individuals to help educate public about Clean Slate priority and legislations and prepare them to advocate for these important changes to our lawmakers this upcoming session. So I encourage you all to get on board by, Gwen, can you drop the Clean Slate website in the chat for me? If you can visit our Clean Slate website. If you're interested in fighting for Clean Slate, I encourage you to do that. We also have a working group that I'll be working with leadership teams on different things around Clean Slate this session. So I encourage you all to reach out or drop your info in the chat if you're interested as well. Next slide, please. And then another priority issue is the DOC oversight. So our correctional oversight is something that advocates in Missouri have been calling for several years now. Last year was the first year with a Republican-filed oversight bill, which is HB 2689 with Representative Lovasco. And basically, why do we need oversight? It's going to help protect the incarcerated people, correctional staff, and Missouri taxpayers. This state has paid over $66 million in lawsuits just in the past 4 years. So that's an extreme excessive amount of money that's going towards that. This legislation would create an independent ombudsperson appointed by a correction oversight committee, and that correction oversight committee would be comprised of lawmakers from both houses and parties, medical and mental health practitioners, representatives of prisoner advocacy and reentry groups, a formerly incarcerated man and woman, a family member of a currently incarcerated person, and a person who was formerly employed as a correctional employee. Gwen, did you have anything else to add to that? Nope. She
No,
dropped
I
our,
did
oh,
drop-
go ahead.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I did drop in the chat a weekly perspective that we published recently about oversight that has a lot of links to research if you would like to learn more.
So as I stated before, I encourage you all to visit the Missouri Clean Slate campaign website and then check out that article that Gwen dropped in there. But we also have working groups and leadership groups, so please drop your information. Kanika, I see yours. Thank you. And Gwen, I'll yield it to you.
All right, thank you, Rika. So in addition to the things that we are proactively fighting for in all of our policy priority areas, but especially in criminal justice, we also spend a good percentage of our time during session fighting bad bills. And one kind of category of bills that keeps coming up every single session, and there's already lots on the docket so far this year, are the so-called truth in sentencing bills. Truth in sentencing is a term that means a belief that people should be serving higher percentages of their prison sentence. Now, here in Missouri, if you have been convicted of a violent offense, you already have to serve a very high percentage, 85% of your sentence. Similarly, if you have a prior prison commitment, so even if you're, being incarcerated or charged on a nonviolent drug felony, for example, if you have a previous prison commitment, you're going to be in a different kind of tier of sentencing structure. You're already having to serve heightened percentages. So truth in sentencing is really trying to solve a problem that does not exist in Missouri. But for politicians that want to be perceived as being tough on crime, I think this is an attractive thing to trot out year in year again. It really moves backwards, right? This is not what we should be focused on if we want to reduce prison populations, move the needle away from mass incarceration. The last thing we want to do is hamstring judges, hamstring parole boards by forcing people to serve longer percentages of their sentences. People today are staying in Missouri prisons longer than they were in previous years. The DOC data is really clear on this point. The average amount of time that incarcerated individuals spent in prison has risen from 2018 to last year, 2023. So again, within sentencing is really a lot of posturing, but it would have very real consequences were these bills to pass. Next slide. As I said, these bills have popped up every year that I've been working with Empower. This is my third session. So last year we saw this language come up as amendment onto House Bill 1777 and as multiple standalone bills. Already this year we have a number of these bills that have been filed in both the House and the Senate, again, focusing on trying to increase the percentage of time that people largely with nonviolent offenses would have to serve. And as Rika was talking about with correctional oversight, our prisons are already at capacity, struggling with the populations that they currently hold, severely understaffed, etc. The last thing that we need to do is double down on policies that would exacerbate that problem. Next slide, please. So how can we move the needle in the right direction? I'm glad that you asked. We can improve parole eligibility. There's three main pathways that we talk about when we're talking about how to get people out of prison earlier. Compassionate release. This is focused on elderly incarcerated individuals or people that have significant medical problems. The idea being, it's more compassionate to let them out of prison and have them be able to spend their time sick or as they are rapidly aging in the community. It's also a reduced strain on prison medical system that we again know to already have major problems, and the prison population in general is aging significantly compared to the general population. So we're seeing the prison population every year get older and older, and that's because folks sent in the 90s and early 2000s to lengthy prison terms are still incarcerated, getting older and needing more medical care. So compassionate release is a great method for getting some of those folks back into the community. Earned time policies would grant earlier parole eligibility for completion of either educational or restorative justice programs. So you complete those programs, you get time off your sentence, or I misspoke, not time off your sentence, but you are eligible for parole earlier. So the parole board still has a say. Good time policies, similar to earned time, but you're getting earlier parole eligibility just for the time that you have completed without any behavioral misconduct. As I said, our prison population is aging rapidly. In 2023, 24% of the more than 23,000 incarcerated folks in Missouri are over the age of 50. 50 is the kind of considered like the elderly age cutoff in prison because prison is such a traumatic and stressful environment. Your body ages more rapidly. So they say experts have shown through research that are cognitive and physical age is about 10 years on average older if you have been incarcerated for lengthy amounts of time. I'm just noticing things in the chat. We do not have for-profit prisons. However, we do have privatized healthcare in Missouri prisons and other private companies that are very much in play, but the overall administration of prisons is done by the state. Next slide. Every year there are multiple bills that would address improving parole eligibility through those different pathways. You can learn more about the issue of the aging prison population in that link there, which I will, or if somebody can drop in the chat, that would be great. 2024 legislation we saw from Senator Roberts, Senator Washington, Senator Williams, Senator McCreary, Representative Bill Allen, and Representative Collins. And this really represents all kind of three different mechanisms are represented as bills. In 2025 already, we've seen a couple pre-filed bills from Senator Washington, Senator Roberts, and Senator McCreary that would offer improved parole eligibility to different groups of individuals. Next slide. So we've talked about Clean Slate, we have talked about correctional oversight and ways that you can get connected with us in that work. The fight against truth and sentencing bills continues, and as always, we are trying to pass legislation that would get folks that are at risk to their communities out of prison earlier. But we do have a host of other bills that we are going to be watching and actively encouraging folks to either support or oppose, depending on the issue. The first step being local control, the removal of local control of policing. This comes up every single year. No surprise it's here again. They are trying to remove local control of the St. Louis City Police Department. So expect us to be on top of that, communicating with you all about when and how you can testify and advocate against those bills. We support diversion programs that would divert people away from prison incarceration. There are several bills this year that have already been pre-filed that would establish a statewide system for DWI diversion. So we will be actively following those. There is a bill from Senator Coleman that would close the judicial loophole for death penalty eligible cases. Right now, Missouri is one of the only states that has this loophole that if a jury does not reach an agreement about if someone should be given the death penalty, a judge is able to overstep and still order capital punishment, even when the jury is not able to make a decision. A bill from Representative Black would establish statewide mental health courts. So again, more diversion options, understanding the context surrounding someone's criminal offense is key to trying to reduce the number of people that end up in prison. And then a bill from Representative Murphy that would abolish the death penalty. Really hope that that gets a hearing and that are able to share why they believe the penalty should be abolished in Jefferson City. Thank you so much for joining us today. I will put my email in the chat, and Rika, if you put your email in the chat as well, please reach out and connect with us about all things criminal justice. Thank you.
All right, and with that, we are going to turn it over to Christine Woody to talk about food security.
Great. Thanks, Mallory. So Empower Missouri has been working on food security, food access issues for many, many decades. And myself, along with Amanda Berry, are our food security policy managers. And we're going to walk you through a couple of the issues that we're going to be focusing on this upcoming legislative session. The first one I want to talk about is this upcoming session, we're going to start working on building support around increasing access to free school meals for kids in the state of Missouri. As I'm guessing most of you know that currently there is a federally funded national school lunch program. You can see on the slide above here the income guidelines that show which families are eligible for this program. Currently, for a family, you have to be at or below a federal poverty level of 130% for your student to be eligible to receive a free school meal. There is also an additional program called a reduced price meal program, which is for families who are at 185% of the federal poverty and below. And that reduces the cost of school breakfast and school lunch to what you see on that slide, for 30 cents for the families for breakfast and 40 cents for lunch. We know that these copays are still a challenge for a lot of families. And we realize that this program and having access to school meals is super important for kids. There has been so much research to show that having high quality nutrition daily in your life provides so many important things, right? Cognitive function, increased academic achievement, higher test scores, improved attendance rates, and then including all of the health improvements that come along with eating healthily. So Missouri, along with a lot of other states, saw, if you want to go to the next slide, Lucas, that when during COVID, one of the provisions that the federal level changed was that it provided free school meals to all children in public schools. So every school had lunch just included. So there was all free school meals. And so many states saw that the benefits of that for health and attendance and financial reasons and making the ease of administrative kind of oversight for this sort of program. A lot of states are now taking it amongst themselves since the federal level has gone back to kind of business as usual. So a lot of states have realized how wonderful providing free school meals to all of their students was, that they're taking it upon themselves to make those changes on the state level. This chart right here shows all of the states that have either passed an increased access to school meal bill on the state level or have at least had some bills introduced in their legislature. Many other red states are already working on this as well. And you can see Missouri has done the same thing. For the last couple of years, Missouri has had bills to increase free school meals. And 2025 is no different for this upcoming session. So Empower Missouri is realized that this is an important issue. We really want to focus on this and see if Missouri can increase free school meals for its at least most vulnerable students in the state. So if you want to go to the next slide, Lucas, we really are kind of building a coalition to work on this. Amanda, my counterpart, is really taking the lead on the work on this issue. She's put together this really great campaign page that you're more than welcome to visit just to get more information about the issue and the work that we're doing. And we'd love for you to sign on as kind of a what she's calling a campaign champions committee, which is really a group of folks who are committed to working on this, to getting it done. If you want to go to the next slide, we do have some pre-filed bills already addressing this. The first two on the list from Representative Brian Seitz and a newly elected Senator Stephen Weber would provide free school meals for all students in the state of Missouri. It would be a universal school meals program. That is a very expensive cost. The fiscal note for doing something like that is like millions and millions and millions of dollars. That is a very expensive cost. We've worked with Senator Angela Mosley, who has the other bill that's been filed. The last 2 years, she has also filed a bill that would be universal through some research that we've worked on alongside Operation Food Search and looking at what some other states have done. A much more kind of reasonably cost bill that we think could have impact for the families that may need it the most and is more feasible in a state like Missouri is what she's proposing in her bill this upcoming year, which would get rid of that reduced priced cost meal. So it would provide free school meals for every student in a public school at 185% of poverty and below. Covering those costs would be coming from state funds, right? So all of those kids would be part of the National School Lunch Program. The reduced price kids would get those meals costs all the way up to that 30 and 40 cent copay. Then Missouri would kick in those copays with its state funds, creating a free school meal program up to 185% of poverty. So currently Senator Mosley's bill states that. Senate Representative Seitz and Senator Weber's is universal school meals. So we're going to use all three of those bills as an opportunity to do some education with legislators this upcoming session. Another issue that Empower Missouri has been working on for many, many, many years is what is known as the SNAP lifetime ban opt-out bill. So the way that that works back in the mid-90s on the federal level, the federal legislators passed a lot of welfare reform, really tough on crime, tough on drug bills. And one of those bills that they had passed stated if you have a drug felony on your record, you would be banned from accessing the SNAP, the food stamps program, for the rest of your life. So it was a lifetime ban. When they passed that provision, they stated that states can pass legislation on their own to either modify that ban in some way or completely opt out of it. As you can see, since the 90s when this provision was created, a lot of states have passed bills that completely opted out of the lifetime ban. You can also see on this chart that Missouri is one of the states that has a modified ban. Empower Missouri was instrumental in getting that modified ban passed in 2014. We were super excited about it and thought this was a win. Some of the attorneys that I work with at Legal Services came to me maybe 4 or so years ago and said, Christine, did you know that we've actually never gotten a client of ours on SNAP who have a drug felony? The way that that modification was written is so narrow and so confusing and so cumbersome that it is still practically a lifetime ban. And I said, no, I was not aware of that. We should probably work on changing that. So the last few years, we have had legislators who have filed bills that would completely opt Missouri out of that lifetime ban. It got rather close last year, and I am cautiously optimistic that we might be able to get it done this year. We again have 2 Republicans who have filed those bills for us this year. In the House, it's a new legislator. His name is Representative Bryant Wolfen. He was chosen to file this bill for us because our bill sponsor for the last couple years has been Chad Perkins. As you may have remembered earlier in this this little update, Mallory had mentioned that Chad Perkins is now in leadership. When someone moves to leadership, they a lot of times don't really file bills because they're really busy with other things. So he was not going to be able to file the bill for us this year, but he has gotten Representative Wolfen to do it for us. So that bill is House Bill 320. And on the Senate side, Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman is again filing it for us. Her bill is a much larger package that includes a lot of things regarding women who are incarcerated while pregnant, with their health care and nutrition and other sorts of provisions around that. And within that bill, she has a statement that says that Missouri would opt out of that lifetime ban. So those are our 2 sponsors for this upcoming year, and we're optimistic that it's going to be moved through. And then just a few other things that we are going to be following and either working for or working against. We are working with Representative Phil Amato. He is from Jefferson County. He has filed a bill regarding the food pantry tax credits. In addition to increasing the amount of money that is available for that tax credit for folks who donate to food pantries, there is a fix in that language this upcoming year. The way that that tax credit works is once the money is used up, you only get a proportion of the amount of the tax credit that you thought you were going to get. And once that happens, when you still owe a little bit of taxes that you weren't sure you were going to have to owe, the state of Missouri actually puts a penalty on that and interest on that, and you end up having to pay more than you would have to have paid if you just would have not gotten the tax credit, which is really a deterrent to folks who are donating to nonprofits. So within his bill, House Bill 324, it not only increases the amount of money in that tax credit, it adds a fix. So if you owe money when the taxes reach that cap, you won't be charged interest or a penalty. You'll have 60 days to pay what you owe without any penalties, which we think is a good fix. In addition, Senate Bill 67 also makes that fix. It does not increase the amount of money in the tax credit, but it does make that penalty interest fix. So you won't owe extra if you don't get the full credit. Another one where we're going to be working with Senator Angela Mosley on, Democrat from St. Louis. She's again filing a bill that would create a restaurant meals program within the SNAP program for the state of Missouri. What the restaurant meals program would allow that any household who have all elderly, disabled, or folks who are considered homeless in their SNAP household, they will be able to use their SNAP dollars at certain restaurants to buy a hot meal. Currently, with SNAP, you can only use your benefits for cold, unprepared foods at grocery stores or convenience stores. Nothing hot, so not the hot rotisserie chicken, not any prepared food that are at grocery stores, which is sometimes difficult for folks who are elderly or homeless or disabled to prepare that food. This would provide an option for that population to be able to access a hot prepared food at a restaurant. And then finally, a bill that we oppose and have opposed for many, many years, but yet again is being refiled once again, is House Bill 315. This is from Representative Benny Cook. He has filed this bill for many years and we have been able to stop it. Currently, the way that the TANF program works is the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. It's what you probably hear as is kind of like that cash benefit that is many times for single moms with kids. It's not a whole lot of money, but it does provide them cash to be able to use. His bill would not allow those folks to be able to access cash with their benefit, right? They would only be able to use it from the card. So they wouldn't be able to go to an ATM and get money out. That is actually not allowable through the federal rules of TANF. But Representative Cook files this bill over and over again. So we will continue to work with him and continue to advocate against that once that bill comes to a hearing this session again. I'm happy to take any questions and I will put my email in the chat and the link to the food security bill tracker that is on our website where you can follow the progress of all of these bills this legislative session.
Thanks, Christine. Now Mallory and I are going to cover some of our housing priorities. Shout out to Misha Smith and V. Sanchez, who are both traveling as our affordable housing policy managers. Otherwise, they would cover it. And if you're listening, I'll put my dad hat on and say, keep your eyes on the road. No, I think they're both, they may be passengers. I think they're all being very safe travelers throughout the state. So our first priority is the Missouri Housing Trust Fund campaign. And the Missouri Housing Trust Fund is really our most flexible source of funding for housing stabilization. So that's homeless prevention, interventions, rental assistance, new rental construction, and rehabs, and really focused on affordable housing for low-income residents. It's currently funded through a $3 fee on real estate transactions when documents are filed as part of real estate transactions. It's been not adequate for many years now. There's been a lot more request and need for this funding to do things like provide rental assistance, do construction projects, rehab homes and buildings so low-income residents can have housing. And it's not surprising that there's been this big gap between the need and the request and what the money that's in the fund, because it hasn't been increased since 1994. And so it stayed as this $3 recording fee when the Housing Trust Fund was first established in 1994. We think we've got a quick time. I just thought, I looked up many ways to represent 1994, but this is a quick trivia game 50 minutes into our presentation. I'm going to give you the artist from 1994 for the top 10 songs from the Billboard Hot 100. And please, if anyone can name the title of the song they were on the list in 1994, throw it in the chat. So that's Ace of Base, appears multiple times. All for One, Boyz II Men, Celine Dion, Mariah Carey, who, you know, very topical. It's not All I Want for Christmas. It's another song. That's a hint. Lisa Loeb, Toni Braxton. This one, maybe someone will get. Bryan Adams, Rod Stewart, and Sting. That's it. Those are your artists from 1994. Point being, this has been a long time since this has been increased, and that's why we're having a lack of funds. And it's really determined by real estate activity. And so when there's less real estate in activity in the year, there's less buying and selling of property, then there's less revenue generated by recording fees, and we see a big gap in what's needed. Checking. I'll check while Mallory's speaking. I don't think we have any right answers, so keep the guesses coming. We've made a lot of progress. This is really credit to Misha Smith on our team who's led this campaign. They've got a great steering committee dedicated to this and currently working on securing a Republican sponsor to introduce the bill to increase the amount that's collected through that fee and really be able to respond to more of the requests needed for housing stability for low-income Missourians. Next slide. So a little bit more about why this campaign's necessary. I think one of the things that I was really surprised to see is that one of the largest requests, or the largest request, is for these one-time rental assistance payments. And so these are renters, who maybe have a car repair they need to get fixed. So there's a 1 monthly increase. There's a medical expense. Maybe they were hospitalized, needed a surgery, couldn't work for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And they got this short-term financial hardship. And in order to keep their family housed, they need these one-time rental assistance payments. So that's a big part of preventing homelessness and providing for Missouri families. Now that's a really, I think, an important and necessary part, but really short term. One thing to note, because there's been this gap between what's in the fund and collected in the fee and what's needed, there's been no funding awarded for construction since 2023. And so when we talk about longer term solutions, we need all these solutions. We need rental assistance, we need homelessness prevention, but we also need construction funds for affordable housing, rehab funds for affordable housing. The funds as they are now just cannot meet all of those needs. And so that's why the increase is necessary. And it's really is this flexible pot of money. The nonprofits who administer it really appreciate it, that they can use it in lots of different ways to support keeping the families they serve housed. And finally, it's not a new a tax. This isn't a new, we're not adding a tax. There's no additional new fee. This is just a fee that exists on real estate activity. And this would just be an increase, a slight increase on what those fees are. And it'll help a lot of Missourians stay housed. Okay, I've got one more thing to say and then I'll pass to Melly. I'm really excited to get to the chat. I will talk about 2 other legislations, the top 2 there, Senate Bill 64 and House Bill 45, which are the senior property tax credit. The property tax credit, sometimes called circuit breaker, is for older adults and Missourians with disabilities who are living on a fixed income. And it's really to keep them housed and keep them in their homes by providing them relief from paying property tax and a credit to offset some of the cost of paying for their property taxes. Like the Housing Trust Fund, one of the difficulties here is there's been no changes to the income eligibility or property tax credit amount in 16 years, which means less people qualify to receive the credit. And at the top end of the eligibility, it means some people are only receiving tax relief in the amount of $10 a year. So it's a really tiny amount. So both of these bills address adjusting the income eligibility and tax credit amount to provide more relief to older adults in Missouri. And Senator McCurry's bill also sets sort of an automatic adjustment to those figures, so we don't have to keep coming back to every 16 years or sooner to adjust it. So there's some automated adjustments to that. Okay, I'll pass it to Mallory to cover the other bills we're following.
Thanks, Lucas. So I would say, since we're running a little short on time, I'm actually gonna kind of skip past the other bills that will potentially be supporting and really focus on these 2 bills that we are really concerned about and will be continuing to work to oppose this session. So HB 343 is a bill that the legislature took up last year. It did not make it across the finish line, but we are concerned that it does have enough support to potentially pass this year. So what this bill would do, there are several cities across the state of Missouri who have proactively passed local legislation that require private property owners, so landlords, to accept Section 8 vouchers. So that cannot be the reason why you turn someone away is because they're looking to pay with that housing choice voucher. We think that that's a really good policy. Already we see across the country that less than 5% of active landlords are taking those vouchers. And yet we don't really understand why. They are one of the single most reliable sources of rent payments that exist. And so to not take them really does feel like direct discrimination against people who are living in poverty, who were able to qualify for those vouchers in the first place. So we very much oppose this piece of legislation, which was brought to Representative Keithley by the Realtors Association. And we will be doing a lot of public education work on this issue over the next several months, and really working to push legislators to reject that proposal. The other thing that we'll be fighting against, assuming that it is filed again this year, is the bill that the Cicero Institute has been pushing in Missouri for the last 3 years to criminalize homelessness in the state, as well as to divert funds away from Housing First models, which is the proven solution to getting people safely and stably housed, and instead asking the state to address homelessness by setting up sanctioned campgrounds across the state, which is a model that came out of Texas, where Cicero is located. But in Texas, they have a very different climate that we have here in Missouri. And so there are many, many reasons why we don't think that sanctioned campgrounds are a good or safe option. But if you want to take the most basic one, it's just because we have very cold winters here, and tents are not a good way to stay warm and safe in the winter months. So we're waiting to see who is going to bring that legislation back. Last year, it was filed by Senator Holly Rader, who gave up her seat in the Senate to run for lieutenant governor this past cycle, so she will not be back. So we're waiting to see if someone else is going to pick up that legislation and will again be leading the opposition to it in the legislature. So stay tuned on that. And with that, I'm going to kick it back to Lucas for the last couple of minutes to tell you about the events that we have coming up over the next 2 months.
Thanks. Now you can go to the next slide. Our first event coming up at the beginning of January is new. It's the Back to Session Boot Camp. And this is an opportunity for those of you new to the legislative process or just want a refresher on the basics to come learn from Sarah Owsley, our advocacy director, about the process, submitting testimony, who's who in the Capitol, how to connect with lawmakers, all of that. We had some folks ask whether it's same or different sessions. They are different sessions. So on the 6th, January 6th, January 7th, January 8th, January 9th, they'll cover different topics. You're welcome to attend just one, but they are different subjects. And so if you want to learn, you can come to them all. For those of you who knew those 1994 songs and maybe have been in the game a little longer, I know you know younger colleagues who you want to encourage to start doing advocacy. So feel free, I dropped the link in the chat, send it to them, email it to them, maybe send them, Hero by Mariah Carey as inspiration when you send it to them, but please join us and learn. We need all the help, voices, faces, people in the Capitol that we can have. And then our next 2 events later on in February is our virtual week of action. We'll do a deeper dive on some of the issues we talked about today, and then be able to take some collective action together to contact lawmakers and get some of these policies that were discussed today across the finish line during the legislative session. And then our next event, 2/25/2025 on February 25th, is our day of action. And so as I like to say, if you're sick of yelling at the internet, or if you enjoy yelling at the internet like me, either way, it's good to not just yell at the internet as your only outlet. Come to the state capitol, join us together. We're going to have speakers, a rally. We're going to attend hearings, meet with legislatures, and make sure our voice and presence is felt in the Capitol on 2/25/2025. And then last but not least, we've got an ongoing book club. We talked about housing there at the end. We've got 2 books focused on homelessness. First one's When We Walk By, Forgotten Humanity, Broken Systems, and the Role We Can Each Play in Ending Homelessness in America. And then the second one is Homelessness is a Housing Problem, How Structural Factors Explain U.S. Patterns. There's afternoon and evening options if you want to join like-minded individuals, talk about books, maybe even yell at the internet a little bit. I encourage you to sign up using the link I just put in the chat. And of course, next slide, please follow us on social media. There's our links. And last but not least, thanks for joining us. Please reach out. You can reach out at info@empowermissouri.org. Others have put their emails in the chat. Please reach out. We look forward to hearing and working alongside you in the upcoming session.
Happy holidays, y'all.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you.
Ooh, we are not on Blue Sky Social yet. We are looking at new platforms, and we'll let you know if we get signed up over there. Oh, Jet says we do have an account. See, our comms team is super on top of things. We'll get that added to the slides in the future and let you know when we're super active there. Thanks, everyone.